Lacey's story. The week I'm writing this, I celebrated 7 years of being on this path, and Recovery Dharma has been with me for practically the entire time. My sobriety has been built on the wisdom of the Dharma and the empowerment to decide what my recovery should look like. I was clinging onto about 6 months of sobriety when I started going to our Buddhist recovery meetings in New York City. At the time, there were only 2 meetings in the city, and one of them happened to be within walking distance of my apartment in Brooklyn. When I came in, I saw a friendly, low-key, queer space, and while I was nervous, I also felt safe. The folks I saw there that first evening would eventually invite me to vegan tacos around the corner, and one would become my mentor. I wanted to be like these people and spend time with them. It always felt like I was ancestrally predestined to be an alcoholic and to experience the heavy shame that is its close companion. From an early age, I was taught about how one becomes an alcoholic and what an alcoholic looks and behaves like. I also learned that it was an identity you didn't share with others, that you had to keep it a secret. My family tradition of silence had been passed down from likely hundreds of years of addiction, inspired by the trauma of shame, poverty, and violence. Active addiction felt like being buried under layers of heavy blankets. I couldn't move, couldn't really breathe, but was also somewhat comfortable laying there, being flattened. It was a way to make myself smaller and quiet my instincts. I think of that Marianne Williamson quote a lot, about how we actually fear our brightness and ability more than we fear our darkness and inadequacy. I don't remember a ton of details from my 12 years of active addiction. I do know that it was fun in the beginning. I worked in media, and drinking was part of the job description. I was good at drinking a lot, and it was good for my career. My lifestyle was buying party dresses I couldn't afford, going to boozy events with bold-faced names, staying out until 4 a.m. and sharing hangovers in the office with the coworkers I had partied with. I did a lot of convincing people to drink with me when they didn't really want to, and racking up debt trying to keep up with the hungry ghost inside of me. I also put myself into plenty of dangerous situations, but like I said, much of it is pretty blurry. I kept going at full speed, abusing my mind and body, knowing that if I slowed down even slightly, I may not be able to get going again. This kind of lifestyle was the one I thought I was supposed to have, and what everyone wants to have, besides the debt, danger, and daily hangovers. I was purposefully ignoring and shoving down my need for quiet alone time, reflection, and spirituality. Through therapy and late-in-life diagnoses, I know now that my neurodiverse brain is easily overstimulated by noise, crowds, and visuals. And when that happens, I can become nonverbal. I plowed through all of this with the help of alcohol. Ultimately, this all led to my becoming very isolated with terrible depression and anxiety. I couldn't respond to emails or, God forbid, answer phone calls. I could barely finish my sentences when I spoke. I would trail off and go quiet, hoping the other person would pick up the end of the thought for me. I didn't have confidence in anything that came out of my head. I would wake up every morning absolutely hating myself, calling myself dumb and ugly and pathetic. I would review or try to remember every stupid thing I had said or done the night before and then reel from the shame. That shame took up a leaden residence in my body. These intense feelings of low self-worth inspired me to seek relationships with the wrong people. I thought I had to drink in order to find connection, but drinking only led me to unhealthy connections that ended up lasting years. Even though I was surrounded by sober people in my family, I found the idea of quitting drinking to be unimaginable. It felt like if I could do that, I could achieve anything I wanted in life. I still think this is true. Besides the physical and psychological dependence, I'd have to take on the identity of the addict or alcoholic. Someone who had to keep this large, shameful part of themselves a secret, who could no longer have fun or be normal. A life of sobriety was a life sentence and a burden. I made the first steps to getting sober once the alarm bells from my childhood education about alcoholism got too loud for me to ignore. I was drinking earlier and earlier in the day, and my depression and anxiety were becoming unmanageable. My entire life had been taken over by the when, where, how, and what to drink. I was scared that I had to hit my proverbial rock bottom before I quit, but that turned out not to be true. There were a number of aspects I knew about traditional recovery that I was wary of. I am used to doing things on my own and taking care of myself, so that's how I was going to do recovery too. No fellowship for me. I was lucky enough to find an addiction counselor I connected with right off the bat, and she was the one who eventually suggested I check out Buddhist recovery so I could at least have some examples of how sober lives were lived, or at least the kind of sober life I wanted to live. When I first started going to meetings, I had never meditated before, so I would sit there and kind of peek out and see what people were doing. Are they really meditating? I didn't get it. Eventually, though, I figured I might as well give it a shot. One of my late-in-life diagnoses was obsessive-compulsive disorder, OCD. And when I started out, I thought that if I didn't meditate perfectly, it wouldn't count. Luckily, that's not true at all. There's practically no wrong way to meditate. Eventually, meditation started doing its magic on me. I found that if I had a craving, I could see it and not get swept up in its pull. The craving would be like a hot air balloon floating all by itself in my head, and my natural reaction would be to be curious and kind about it. I wonder why that appeared. Through an ongoing meditation practice, I now see other cravings, like for sugar and online shopping as well. I can investigate why it's coming up. Am I bored? Am I avoiding a difficult emotion? The concept of fellowship, or being part of a community of sober people, felt pretty lame to me when I first considered entering recovery. I don't think I'm the only one with addiction that doesn't want to be a burden, or rely on or trust other people to be there for me. In fact, I know that's not the case because we've dedicated a whole section to it in this book, Isolation and Connection, page 43. Making these friendships in the beginning had real middle school lunchroom vibes, except in this case, everyone invites you to sit with them. Before the pandemic, our sangha in New York City would get dinner together in Koreatown every Saturday night after our meeting. Over bowls of vegetarian bibimbap, we would discuss our sober dating misadventures, ongoing family dramas, and the basics of how to get through life without numbing yourself. Having someone running alongside you can make you want to keep going, and forming these friendships has been one of the greatest gifts of my recovery. This same sangha persuaded me to enter local service leadership positions, and because it felt like such a welcoming space, with people truly being their different selves, I felt comfortable enough to join with my unsure voice. The more experience I had in service positions, the more confident my voice grew to the extent that I now engage in full-on debates in our RDG board meetings. As the book says, to engage in wise speech is to use our voice, especially if we've felt like we don't have permission to use our voices or lack the power to speak and be heard. Page 28. Sharing my opinions and thoughts out loud can be nerve-wracking and uncomfortable. Many times afterward, I would repeatedly go over and over the things I said, reviewing them for their articulateness and impact. But I have discovered through this path that the key to freedom is learning to sit through discomfort. And my mindfulness practice helps me do that, identifying where I feel it in my body and letting it be. Granted, it will be a lifelong practice. My recovery journey, especially the service I have taken part in at my local sangha and the global nonprofit, has done a lot to heal some of that generational trauma I spoke of earlier. I'm healing myself with methods that are the opposite of what has been traditional in my family. I do my best to be kind and compassionate to myself and take time for self-care and healing. And I enjoy sharing my sober identity and speaking about my experience with addiction very openly. The Dharma has taught me that there's no shame in suffering because it is universal. Addiction is simply a symptom of that suffering. Recovery Dharma's commitment to empowerment has been the foundation of my recovery. To begin to recover, it turned out that I needed to learn to put my needs first, to build confidence in myself and my ability to sit through cravings, anxiety, and other extreme discomfort. I have been able to do all of that, slowly but surely, through this path. RD has taught me I can trust myself and my instincts, and that if I listen, I will heal. The voice of the Buddha nature in me is becoming easier to hear. It's soft but sure, and it leads me into doing what another fellowship describes as the next right thing. You have the same voice inside of you.